Say
You ever sucked a dick you didn't like?
Two, show 'em how we do. 3, 4, turn it up more. 5, 6, can you do it like this? 7, 8, and don't be late now. Nah, everybody come on. Everybody come on.
What's up, Sam Taggart here, and we're here in Sundance where I'm about to go on stage to help Solcius Direct. Now, the fun part about this speech is it's been now 5 years since I've really been there, and you know, it was one of those things, like I started their direct program, and then once I left, it kind of took a tank, and then Brian Jackson was like, all right, let's go put some gas back into this. And to see all the leaders, a full event of key leaders all over the country, this thing thriving, is just such a fun reunion to come back to and present from, as I've taken my journey to see where they've gone since. And so follow along, we'll see what we come up with, and reunite with some old friends.
Real, true, capable, charismatic, professional speaker. Everybody knows, have seen him in social media, Sam Taggart. You're a legend, bro. Come on, let's give Sam Taggart a But really quick, what you've done, like what you've done in the industry, like you're so appreciated, respected, but more important, loved. Like, people like you. You're such a good guy, dude. You're so successful, but the way you're handling your success and your business, inspiring others, it's really, really worthy of being acknowledged. I admire you. I love your success. I've seen you throughout the years taking off, and what you're doing for the industry and people also is great, because we're talking about contribution. And I can see that through you. God bless you too. So now let's hand the mic to Sam Taggart.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, and I have a lot of thanks to you guys. Like, it's so fun being back here, and like, I feel like this is like a reunion. And first off, give you guys a big, you guys all deserve a freaking round of applause for being here. Like, this is impressive. Give yourselves a big round of applause. And I feel honored that I was invited to come here and speak. Like, honestly, it really is a privilege. I have 2 stories, and I want to see if I can get through them within the time that I have. Raise your hand if you're like, most of you guys are in sales. Raise your hand high if you're in sales, like you've sold something. Okay. Most everybody should be call themselves a sales rep, whether you're in operations or phones or whatever. You got to at least sell your wife on going to where you want to go on a date on Friday night. Like, everybody at least has some kind of convincing to do, right? Okay, so really simple. Influence is a currency. Influence is a what? Currency. Influence is a what? Currency. And I'm going to talk about a simple story that I don't share very often. And I'm going to tie this down to the simple principle of influence is a currency. Very simple. Everybody in here want to be a leader or is a leader today. They feel like they're influencing someone. Raise your hand if you're an influencer. Say, I am. You guys influencers? Okay, cool. Guys, I'm telling you, it is one of the greatest currencies in society. Because when you can convince and you can lead and you can get people to follow you, there's a lot that can happen there. So I'm going to tell you a story of how I came to get to know these guys, which is kind of fun. So I actually worked for a company called Clear Solar, rest in peace. I don't know if they still exist. And I'm gonna tell you. So I'm in Lake Powell. On a houseboat. We're with all the leaders. Here's J-Lo, Chris, where you at? He's in this. We go to Lake Powell, and I knew that things were kind of on the rocks. And this is all the leadership retreat like this, and we had just started building another solar company's sales division. I was the VP of sales there. And I felt like something was happening in the market, like they didn't have any money, we weren't getting paid, things weren't organized, our jobs weren't going in, and things were just kind of rocking. I'm sitting here in Powell, the leader, like, all right, guys, putting our heads down, we're going to figure out how to help fix this, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember getting up on the rock, because it couldn't get service, and I go on a hike. And Brian Jackson calls me, and I somehow had service, and I talked to Brian Jackson, and I was like, well, things are going okay, you know, and I was like pretty open with it. Do you remember this phone call? Okay, he remembers this phone call. So I'm sitting on this rock, trying to get service. It's probably dropping every 13 seconds, calling him back. And I was like, just stay close, because I have no idea where things are going to end up in the next 2-3 weeks. Because things are just crazy, no one's getting paid, and I'm trying my best to hold on to the leaders. So fast forward, I got fired like a week later. So this is a story that no one knows, and I don't sit here and preach this, but I want to tell you the story of influence. This is important. So there's a point where me and the president of this company, who didn't show up to he didn't even go to Lake Powell with the leaders. I'm like, wait, don't you want to come? He's like, no. He wouldn't show up to the trainings. He wouldn't show up to leaders. He never paid people right, and I just was always in a tiff with this guy because I was out here fighting for my people. So the owner was like, well, it's you or him, and he's been here longer, so you're fired. And I was like, really? That's how it's going to go down? And I remember calling J-Lo, and I'm calling people, and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. So, of course, my phone's ringing before I even knew that I was fired. I'm getting legacy in this company and that company, like, hey, heard you were let go. We got a spot for you here. And I called up Brian, and I was like, Brian, I told you, something's crazy. I got fired. And I had known Brian because they were doing the installs for a company called New Power, who I had a little time with. And I just always liked this character. So I said, hey, can I get some advice? Let's sit down. And lo and behold, his magic face, his beautiful muscles, he recruits me. And I'm telling all the Solstice people, I'm like, and I sit down with Kelly Walker and team, and they were showing me the floor plans of this new building that they were going to build, and he's selling me on this vision of where Solstice is going to go. And he's like, we don't have he's like, you can come be a dealer. And I said, I don't want to be a dealer. I want to work with you, and I don't want to be like this dude on an island, because I knew my strengths. And I was like, I want to start your direct program. And they're like, we don't have a direct program. So we're going to talk about how this, like I said, influence is currency. Pay attention to this. Watch this. So I said, I want to start a direct program. Like, no. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, no. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I finally convinced him, let's start a direct program, despite Kelly not really wanting to do it. And Brian's like, yeah, we can do it, whatever. Kelly was like, no, I hate salespeople. Anybody that knows Kelly really well, it's still probably the case. So I got a small head nod right here from this guy. So anyway, he let us start direct. And this is where it went. Does anybody know where this is? This is the Daily Herald. So the Daily Herald is a building that they bought that you now call your headquarters. So this is what it looked like. So we were like, hey, can we go set up some chairs? And we set up the trucks, and we said, hey, and I text all the managers, and I said, guys, tell your team to now meet at this place instead of that place. The sales meeting location has changed. And they're like, okay. So they text all the sales guys, and they say, hey, it was an hour before. And they said, just bring a swimsuit and a gun. And of course, everybody's like, why do we need a swimsuit? And so they show up, to this place, and this is what it looks like. There's Kelly, and I give the bravest William Wallace speech. You had Brian, Kelly Walker, me, just like this, a Raleigh, a rah-rah, and it was like, we're all switching to Solstice. And I'd been dark for 2 weeks, because for legal reasons, I couldn't say anything. So we called this D-Day. And I said, who's with me? And all of a sudden, who stands up? J-Lo, Chris, all the other managers stand up. And all the reps, what do you think they're doing? They're like, what the freak? Like, what is happening? And I'm like, who's with me? And they're like, wait, you guys are all in on this? We're like, yeah, we're in it. And they're all like, what do we do? So then everybody else stands up, except like maybe 1 or 2 people. I swear, like, we got pretty much everybody. And they're like, if we're all switching over to Solstice, and we're in, let's go. And we're going to Kelly Walker's cabin, next slide, and we're going to go swimming, and we're going to go shooting, and we're going to go hang out in this cabin. We're all switching right now, sleep over. Literally, we had a great slumber party. It was a good time. These guys are like, oh, it was a good day. I'll work out the details in a minute, right? And they all come, and overnight, it was like 60, 70 people switch. They were left back with 5 guys. And I'm telling you this story, and that was really the birth. Then it had a death, and then it had a re-resurrection just like a year and a half ago, which has been really cool to watch. Like, super cool to watch. So we start Solstice Direct, and literally it's me on Canva trying to make pay scales, training videos, whip up shirts, get all logos. And I found this on my Google Drive. I'm like, this is like me, it was literally J-Lo and Brian, and we're sitting there just in the old office, and I'm like, hey, let's make shirts. We got to figure out how to train these guys. And it was a birth of a new program that nothing existed. A couple years later, what's cool and the legacy has still gone on. You guys still do the charity trips. We went to Cuba and Thailand. It turned into that. Where that whole meeting room was, that was that. So I'm going to teach you 3 simple keys of influence. What happened is I then had a different direction. And this is where I give mad respects to Brian Jackson. I had a dream in a desert when I was sitting there on a rock on a meditation retreat. And we went to these leadership things, and I was like, hey, I need to do this podcast and start this conference, DDDCon, right? I remember going to Brian and I was like, Brian, I'm kind of stuck serving two masters right now. I'm trying to be VP and I'm trying to be here, but my heart's like over here. And I remember going to Kelly, he's like, so you're going to make money on a podcast? I was like, he's like, well, how much money are you going to make on Door-to-Door Con? I was like, well, we're losing money. He's like, so you're going to chase that? And he's like, we'll see in a couple months. Where Brian Jackson was like, you chase your dreams, man. You figure that out. You go, I support you. And I was like, really? I'm thinking like, when I left Vivint, guys, I was their number one rep. Like 2 weeks later, everybody's like, oh, Sam, you got fired? I was like, I didn't get fired, I left. I went and switched from alarms to solar, like a lot of people did. You know what I mean? But then they threw my name through the mud. Where Brian Jackson, he literally was like, whatever you need, man, I support you and I have your back. I'd love for you to stay, but obviously, if that's what you got to do, good on you. And it was a really cool thing. And like, honestly, like, super cool. Like, first right there is one of the big reasons I'm here, and I'm not speaking at Vivint's little retreat. You know what I mean? So, and I wasn't like, oh, let me charge him. Like, no, I'd love to come. Can I just get at least the massage or something? Which was a great massage, by the way. And I'm going to teach you 3 simple principles of influence that I learned in this situation, okay? And over that journey. Because I don't tell this story very much, but I wanted to share with you guys. The first one is, the most authentic person in the room always has the most influence. When you guys are trying to lead people, so many people try to put up a mask. They try to have this like, look at me, who's got the coolest coat? Like, at the end of the day, the more you can be you and show true colors, the insecure everyone else is like, damn, I wish I could be that authentic and real and cool. But you're just being you. And when somebody sees that you're not being you, your influence starts to drop down. Has anybody else seen that? Say I have. Like, they've noticed them trying to pretend. Second one, influence takes these things: time, value, relationship. And so what's interesting is when I left Clear, they kept telling me, they said, hey, look, if we fire you, Billy says no one will follow. And I looked at the owner, I was like, that's a terrible mistake. Like, I'm not asking to leave. I just think that's a dumb mistake. I want him to say anything, they'll come. He's like, no, that's not what he says. I was like, okay. He's calling me that day of D-Day. We made a mistake. We'll switch. We'll let Billy go. And I'm like, you made your choice. It was pretty savage. But I learned a valuable lesson. Where time was spent, the energy and the amount of effort and the relationships, the bleeding in the street with the people, the training, the late nights, the activities was built there. And Brian was there. Brian was like in it with us when we were at Solstice. At Clear, the other leader? No, not at all. The value that was created. Think of the amount of value that Brian has brought to this organization, and Sergio and other leaders that you guys have seen, hence why you guys are all still here. We don't need to like point the elephant in the room. There's 1,000 other solar companies you could be at. You know what I mean? There's a million other situations you could be in. There was a million different directions I could have gone. But I chose this one because of the value I knew that Solstice could bring, and the leadership that was in place, and the relationship that they could build. And the lessons that I learned, like when people ask me, like in interviews and stuff like that, they're like, who are some of your greatest mentors? I say Brian Jackson and Kelly Walker. They taught me a ton, and they were a great yin and yang. Brian was much more my style. Kelly was definitely like, yes, I need to learn all the opposite things that I don't do. Very good. He's the man. But still, mad mentorship. The next one is the strongest vision will attract. When you learn, I had a different vision. I was like, I need to go unify, up-level, and bring honor and integrity to the door-to-door space. I said, I have a new mission. And I felt called by God. It's like, you need to go do this thing. And I was like, really? Do we have like a miscommunication? No, like door-to-door companies are going to get in the same room and be friends. They're all so competitive. They're cutthroat. They're mudslinging. There's no way that's going to happen. It's like, no, you go do that thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And my mission was pure. If you say, what's the purpose? And you have a really strong purpose as a leader. And then you say, what is the conviction? And you come at it with like mad conviction. Like I was like, guys, we need to fix this problem. And then what's the communication? How do you And then the next one is, what's the consistency to that? How do you keep communicating it in a proper way and stay consistent to that mission? That's when you can really create influence. And what Brian is like, and I'm just giving a lot of love to Brian, because a year and a half ago, he's like, let's resurrect this damn thing. Because he's like, you know what? There's a bunch of these dealers and they're okay, but nobody's as good as I effing am. Because I remember him telling me glory days of him playing football at Utah State. Still thinks he can throw a ball over the mountains. But no, number two, he would be like, yeah, when I used to sell, I swear, all the time he's like, yeah, but when I used to lead Team Sam, like when I used to, like put me in coach, like he was playing like behind the scenes as president. He's like, Sam, but like, you know, in my glory days, and I'm like, oh, cool, man. You got him off the bench. You put him back out of retirement. You pulled like Michael Jordan back on the Wizards. What's so cool about Brian is like, put me in, coach, and look what he's done. Because he had these principles. He said, I have a vision for this direct program. I have a mission. I know how to do this right. I can clearly communicate this. I know how to surround myself, and I know how to treat people right. And the key leaders that have put this direct program together have been doing that. That's why I'm like mad proud to be here today. And that is freaking cool. So you ask yourself, what's your vision? What is your conviction? And when you go to your people and you're trying to rally the troops and you're like, let's go knock or let's go recruit or whatever you're trying to rally them to do, the question is, are you convinced? And do they know the mission? Are you clearly communicating your needs? And are you consistent? Because when you can show up in these patterns, I promise you guys will do wonders, and your influence and the currency of that will continue to increase in value. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Or no, we're not having Mr. One. So last little thing. I'm going to give like one last little story. This is me. I was at Door to Orcon. I'm Door to Orcon, what was it, 4? So Door to Orcon 4, I was like, new mantra, full send. Every year I pick a word. My word this year is expand, okay? So does anybody else pick like a word? They're like, this year my mantra is this, or a word this, or am I just weird? Nobody? Okay, cool. He does? Okay. What's your word this year? Peace. Oh, that's a good one. Mine's expand. It's like world domination. It's like, let's go. Anyway, so we make a good team. I love it. Anyway, so one of mine was full send. So I give a big speech. At the end of the speech, James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, comes up to the speech, and he's like, great speech. Because I told everybody, I told James at in the backstage, I was like, hey, dude, I'm going to run a triathlon this year. And he's like, oh, okay. That's cute. And I was like, oh, that was a terrible thing to tell you. He's like, well, I'm going to do 100 Ironman in 100 days. Do you want to do one with me? I was like, no. It's stupid. You know, and he had given he spoke at the very, very first Door to Orcon. So James and I go way back. So the year I left and did this D2D thing, I called up Iron Cowboy. I was like, hey, will you speak? I don't got no money, but I'm losing money on this thing. He's like, I got you. Like, what? Charged me like a minimal rate. Had him back 4 years later. And now he was like, I'm going to do 100 in 100 days. So he gets up on stage. He's like, come up here, Sam, after his speech. He's like, get up here. He's like, you said this year was your year of full send. So I bet you $5,000 you don't do an Ironman with me, at least just like one of the 100 that I do this year. And I was like, in front of hundreds of people, you know. I'm just like, oh, hey, that's cool. Make me look like an idiot in front of all my peers. I'm like, yeah, I bet. That was a terrible idea. My dad's like, dude, just pay him the $5,000. It's just worth it. So I was like, okay, fine. No, but I was like committed, right? So I'm like, I just made a commitment in front of all my peers. I was like, I gotta do this. So I'm traveling like 4 days of the week, every freaking week. So I'm doing like training runs in Dubai and like swimming in the ocean in Mexico. And like, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this thing. So day of the race comes. This is us. This is a gas station we stop at mile 60. Right after that, you know, when they think they make like, they're like, we're going to take a quick break. When they say break on an Ironman, I'm thinking like, cool, we're going to like chill. When you have to like, guys, you swim for 2.5 miles, you get up at 5:30 in the morning, then you get on a bike for 115, I don't know, 112. There we go. And he's like, yeah, mile 60, we're going to take a pit stop. How long's the pit stop, James? 2 minutes. A 2 minute pit stop. You've been riding a bike for 2.5 hours. You're thinking like, hey, he's like, yeah, go in and get something. So I'm like, he's like, you can eat anything because you're burning a lot of calories. So I grab a Rice Krispie treat, a non-sugared Monster, and I'm like chilling. And then they just start riding away. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Shove the Rice Krispie up the pants. I'm like, holding my Monster on the bike. And as I'm trying to catch up, I get a flat tire. And I just see the Peloton floating away. The Peloton's the pack. And I was like, oh, shoot. So I got a spare with some holes in it. That was smart. So then I hitchhiked my way to the local bike shop with some dude in a truck. And at that point, I'm like, I don't know where they all are. So I just rode and looked at my GPS for 112 miles. Terrible idea. So anyway, fast forward, long story short, meet up with them on the run. Hey, I'm back! They're like, oh, we thought we lost you. Because there were some casualties, definitely casualties in this Ironman. Not everybody made the full thing. We found you. I was like, yeah. And he's like, Sam, you better start running. They kind of walked they like speed walk the thing. He's like, you're about 8 miles behind. And I'm like, no, that sounds terrible. But yes, I will keep power walking with you. This is great. And so then we get to this point where he finishes the Ironman, which is right here. And this is the photo of all the participants. But there was only a photo of 4 people that he took that with, of the people that finished with him right there. And I was like, hey, let's get a photo. He's like, no. You can come by tomorrow and sign the poster and take a picture tomorrow morning at the swim once you finish. I still had 8 miles. And I was like, ow! Kick to the nuts. Really embarrassing. But he held his ground. So then there I am. Okay. And I'm just running until freaking 10 o'clock at night. Finish my damn thing. Terrible. 5:30 to 10 o'clock at night. That's an Ironman. So when he gets up and speaks, like, have some, like, real thinking to that. When he talks about what he did, I'm like, wow, mad appreciation. Couldn't walk for days. So, finish the thing. But I learned something. He said, Sam, people will turn themselves inside out to get back with the peloton. The power of the team. I averaged 21 miles an hour when they were riding in the back of the peloton, meaning I was, like, drafting the whole time. When I was alone, 12. I went half as fast. And what's interesting is he held his ground. He said, I looked at him and I was like, but I got a flat tire. And you know what he said to me? So did I. I had 3 of them. You should have been more prepared. He had a car with like 3 extra bikes following him. It's like, oh, that was smart. I should have had one of those. But I learned something super valuable. And when you guys get to hear James, like, he is one of the best speakers I've ever heard. Accountability and staying committed to your, like, actual purpose and holding the line as a leader. Because so often as a leader, you're like, you can still go on our company trip even though you didn't hit the incentive. It's okay. Like, we'll still let you come. Like, we'll keep you on the team even though you haven't sold 1 this month. When you start to, like, lessen what you and tolerate more and lower your standard, guess what happens? You lose your influence. So I just wanted to share the quick little story because the lessons learned from this leader right here that you guys get to learn from after this are invaluable. So appreciate you guys having me tonight. This was such a fun time, and you guys are awesome. Thank you.